So you're a company called Duke Energy in North Carolina. You supply electricity to the states, and you've got a pretty good setup.
If you've been checking your power bill lately, you may have gotten your own shock. Duke Energy customers in disbelief over the bills that are much higher. Some more than doubled from this time last year.
Surprisingly, the reason varies drastically depending on which state you're in. Now, here in Ohio, Duke tells us bills are going up with the price of natural gas, and that jumped quite a bit last month.
No, $333 is a big difference between $150, $200. So I was a little shell-shocked to see that bill.
And decades ago, you ran into a problem. Your coal power plants created a lot of toxic coal ash, from burning the coal. Toxic coal ash that you have to dispose of somewhere, but disposing of toxic coal ash safely and properly is expensive. So why not just throw it into landfills and ponds near waterways? So that's exactly what you did. For decades, you polluted major rivers, your toxic coal ash seeped into the clean groundwater, poisoning the water of North Carolina homes.
Coal ash first became to public attention in February 2014 when a coal ash pond that Duke Energy operated near the Virginia line spilled 39,000 tons of ash into the Dan River.
And what did you do when you found out that this would cost hundreds of millions of dollars to clean up? You requested that your customers pay for the entire cost of cleaning up the coal ash. Yes, regular homeowners that were paying for your electricity were gonna have to fork the bill for you polluting their water.
What's in the ash basin now and what's going to come out over the next 10 to 15 years depending upon the facility, that's going to be collectively in the Carolinas $8 to $9 billion that cost.
But unfortunately, after nearly 10 years of litigation, you finally had to agree that the residents wouldn't have to pay for the entire cost of the cleanup, just most of it. The settlement decided that Duke Energy would pay for a quarter of the cleanup cost over the next decade, roughly $1 billion, leaving your customers to pay for the other 75% of the cleanup that you caused. And I know, they should be really paying for all of it, but we can live with ourselves here. After all, you did make well over $18 billion in profit last year, so $1 billion in cleanup costs, or even paying for the full $4 billion bill would still be a drop in the buckets. And why can you push your customers around like this? Because for the 10 million residents of North Carolina, they only have one energy company they can turn to light up their homes. You. Yes, that is right. You have a complete monopoly over not just North Carolina, but in some of the neighboring states as well, while being the biggest investor-owned electricity company in the country. Which means you can do whatever you want to your customers and they will just have to bend over and take it. But it's not just North Carolina and these other states. See, almost all of America is like this. In America, only a few powerful companies control the entire electric grid, which leaves them free to do whatever they want to. Stay dangerous, and this is the all-powerful electricity monopoly of America. While America's power grid is in shambles, these utility companies are currently rolling in tens of billions of dollars. And if you have a business that ships stuff, then you have to know about ShipStation. ShipStation is the shipping software that Joe Rogan's On It brand uses, and it's been a complete game changer for their business. It's allowed them to streamline their shipping so much that they're able to ship out over 500 orders an hour, which would have been pretty much impossible without ShipStation. So if ShipStation is good enough for Joe Rogan, it's probably good enough for your brand as well. That's because ShipStation is the fastest, most affordable way to ship products to your customers. All you gotta do is import your orders from all your selling channels, then you can accelerate your shipping with all their streamlining tools, while being able to access shipping discounts of up to 84%. And once you ship out an order, ShipStation will instantly update the tracking information to the selling channel and the customer. They've got over 130,000 merchants using ShipStation right now to save time and drive revenue. And the best part is that you can try it out for free for 60 days before committing. All you gotta do is go to shipstation.com/Jake with the link below to get your free 60-day trial. That's 2 months of faster, stress-free shipping at shipstation.com/Jake Tran with the link below. Thanks to ShipStation for sponsoring this video. Today, electricity is just as important as food and water. Without water, you'll die pretty quickly. But without electricity, society would collapse just as quickly. Which is why a monopoly on electricity is one of the best monopolies you could ever dream of. What are people gonna do? Boycott electricity? Switch providers? But the energy monopoly in America didn't always seem like such a wild injustice. It actually made a lot of sense for the electricity business to operate this way in the beginning. In the 20th century, America was going through the electric revolution.
Edison also developed the first electric power station, which supplied electricity to a small area of New York City. Electricity began to be used for a wide range of applications, including street lighting, transportation, and industry. Electric motors replaced steam engines in factories, making production faster and more efficient. Electric streetcars and trains made transportation more convenient and comfortable. The history of electricity is a story of innovation and progress.
Power plants were growing bigger and getting more advanced every single year. The bigger they got, the cheaper it became for them to generate energy and supply it to more people. And the ultimate goal was to get power into every single building in America. And it was working out well for everyone at first. Building a bunch of competing energy companies all over the place was just too expensive. So it did make sense to have one major energy company for a particular region to keep things as simple as possible. Regional energy monopolies made it easier to distribute power, and originally it did make it cheaper for customers too. And it changed everything. Electricity spread to every household across America, but as we became more reliant on electricity, these energy conglomerates gained more power, more control. American utility companies promised to provide reliable energy at the lowest possible cost to their region. Technically, they weren't even supposed to be making a profit. But they were still allowed to charge whatever rates they needed to keep the business going. So there was a lot of wiggle room. And after a while, all that power got to their heads. Soon they got so big, so entrenched, that it basically became impractical for anyone to start a competing company even if they wanted to. And every small energy provider would just get sucked up by the monopoly. Soon, just a few companies were left to control the entire US power markets. And this monopoly still has Americans in a chokehold to this day. And they were taking full advantage of that control. Without competition, there is no reason for these electricity companies to lower their costs or innovate to provide a better service. In fact, they're actually encouraged by shareholders to spend as much money as possible because it ups the amount they're allowed to charge to customers. Take Major Energy in New York for instance. Major Energy was sued for overcharging its customers and putting out false advertisements to lure them into the trap. And they have been doing this for over a decade. The New York Attorney General said, "We are holding Major Energy accountable for misleading New Yorkers and falsely promising lower prices, but actually overcharging consumers to make a profit." But Major Energy isn't the only corrupt one. It's happening all over the states.
Well, meantime, a new probe is now zeroing in on Central Hudson for possible mismanagement after widespread customer complaints about erroneous bills for more than a year now.
We're talking like hundreds, sometimes even thousands of dollars in erroneous bills.
Senator James Skoufis says his office has fielded hundreds of the same complaints about unexplained high bills from Central Hudson since last October. And now the Public Service Commission is investigating the company's billing practices for possible mismanagement after lawmakers demanded a probe.
Once Central Hudson's executive team found out this was happening, there were loads of things they should have done, could have done, but didn't do to correct this problem.
Energy companies across the country randomly raise their rates all the time because wrongfully charging their customers a few extra $100 can mean a few extra $1 billion for the regional energy monopoly. And the worst part is that sometimes these energy monopolies get reckless, and people end up paying with their lives. It's February 2021 in Texas. Usually the winter weather in Texas would hover around a cool 65 degrees around this time of the year, but this time something unusual is happening. A storm is brewing and temperatures across the state are rapidly dropping.
Southeast Texas bracing for a big Arctic blast. Let's check back in with Blake for the very latest. Blake.
You know, you could live in Houston 100 years and not see what we're about to experience.
The week of Valentine's Day 2021, the temperature dropped below zero. Nobody could remember it being this cold for this long. This was Texas, not Siberia.
And as record-setting cold temperatures hit Texas, every Texan does the same thing. They turn up their heaters to keep warm.
But Texas is the energy state. There was nothing to fear. Just go home, turn on the heat, and hunker down. That's how it should have gone.
But the power grid just couldn't handle the unexpected spike in usage. After all, Texas is normally a pretty warm state. So in an instant, prices skyrocketed from $20 per megawatt hour to $9,000 per megawatt hour in the state's wholesale power markets. The system failed immediately. So the energy companies only had one choice: shut it all down. In the blink of an eye, in the middle of one of the coldest storms Texas has ever seen, millions of people in Texas lost power.
And the concern right now are these rolling outages, these periodic blackouts that have been going into effect since early this morning. That leaves up to 2 million Texans without guaranteed warmth for what looks to be an incredibly frigid night ahead. The entire state for the first time in weather history under that winter storm warning.
We've got lanterns and little lights all set up because the power companies decided to shut everything down because they couldn't handle a winter.
And this wasn't just a little blackout, it was deadly.
As much as we knew to get ready for, we got ready for. Wrapping pipes, trying to bleed faucets, stuff like that was really terrifying.
There had been a wellness check done, and that an elderly couple had passed away in their home. You're trying all of this work to help people, to literally save people. It feels like you didn't do enough. It was a moment of desperation, like we failed.
It was a downward spiral where gas failure caused a power failure, caused a bigger gas failure, caused a bigger power failure.
People were literally freezing to death.
A Texas Department of State Health Services report shows 246 people died due to the storm. 25 people because their medical equipment did not have power. 161 mothers, fathers, children, grandparents froze to death.
And this catastrophe cost hundreds of billions of dollars. And reasonably, citizens were outraged and traumatized. All the while, the power sellers made billions of dollars in profit after the demand for energy went through the roof thanks to the storm. The whole ordeal showed just how bad the energy system in Texas really was. For years, Texas energy companies were warned that their power grid couldn't handle unexpected weather and that it desperately needed an upgrade. But they never listened. And Texas is far from the only one. The entire country is on thin ice when it comes to the power grid, as we went over in our recent video that you should definitely check out. Energy monopolies know that the key to their power is eliminating potential competition, and they've worked very hard to ensure that Americans don't have anywhere else to turn. How are they doing it? By turning to their nice little cronies in Washington. Power companies funnel hundreds of millions of dollars into US politics. Why? Because a few $100 million in exchange for the billions they're making is well worth the investments. But there is hope. As hard as power companies are fighting to hold on to their monopoly, competition is coming. Biden recently passed the Defense Production Act, which is supposed to encourage renewable energy manufacturing in America and to help the solar industry grow.
Now, as the world tries to combat climate change and switch to clean energy, US President Joe Biden ordered emergency measures to boost crucial supplies to solar manufacturers in the country. He declared a 2-year tariff exemption on solar panels from Southeast Asia. Biden suspended tariffs on solar panel imports from 4 countries, invoked the Defense Production Act to compel domestic manufacture of clean energy technology.
The bad news is that the solar panel industry can be even more sketchy than the traditional energy companies, but we'll save that for a future video. So make sure you click the circle on the screen to subscribe.
So how much is Lee paying?
$203.50 a month.
For how long?
For until I'm 60 years old, so 30 years.
We now have $70,000 worth of trash on our roof.
It's absolutely false. Everything they tell you is a lie.
For 2021,